The judge now asking some questions of the defense, kind of trying to get a sense of, well, what is it that they're here to do? Are they going to stay in Broadview?
Yes.
Are they going to come to neighborhoods? Can they engage in crowd control? Can they carry weapons? And the defendant saying, I don't know. I don't have additional info beyond what we've cited in the record. That's not a good sign for the defense there. If they're saying, I don't know, to these questions, that they don't have answers to these specific questions, perhaps the Trump administration not fully prepared, for the arguments that they have to defend in court.
And also giving them a timeline as well. That has happened in court. The judge talking about troops at the federal courthouse tomorrow says no factual basis for that declaration, giving the defense until 3 o'clock this afternoon to prove why that's even needed.
Yeah.
So this is going to be very interesting. The judge is asking a lot of questions about why the troops are here. Also asking this question. They could be at neighborhoods and hospitals and schools, right? So it's very interesting. The judge is really questioning why the National Guard was brought here, and also citing some of what unfolded in L.A. as well. So it doesn't sound like you said,
it's
the defense was prepared.
What it seems like right now is exposing the fact that the defense is making these broad-based claims about lawlessness and crime, but then when the judge starts to dig into specifics, there aren't a whole lot of legal arguments that they're making, or a lot of answers that they have, and so we're already on questions. The judge said she was going to have a lot of questions, and like you said, she's going to give until 3 o'clock for the defense to prove why would troops be needed at the federal courthouse.
And so,
if you go to the federal courthouse, there's giant fencing that the federal government has erected there. Which is unusual. That's usually not. We've seen many high-profile cases there, and we have not seen the need for these fences to be put up. But they are there right now, perhaps in case there are protesters that target federal judges.
What do you make of that 3 p.m. timeline there? Do you think that after 3 p.m. we could possibly have a decision on this hearing coming from Judge Perry? Because I find it very interesting that she's saying, prove it.
Yeah.
And after that, it sounds like that's it.
And she's given due diligence, and she's given, she could have ruled in Monday, right away on a TRO like the judge in Oregon did, but she didn't. She said, let's have time to make all of our arguments here and to answer questions, and that's what they're doing. So she's giving them a lot of due diligence here to kind of drill down into, because this is a serious situation. Now she's asking, will they be solving crime in Chicago? And the defendant now saying, well, to an extent, protection, that could lead to a reduction in violence. So conflating what the president has said, well, we need to go bring the National Guard in to solve crime, versus to just protect ICE agents and doing their job. Those are two different things.
Two different things, and two different things that have now been brought into the spotlight, because initially when this conversation of the National Guard came into play of being deployed here in our state, specifically in the Chicagoland area, the argument from the Trump administration was crime. And we know that you can't put all your eggs into that basket, because when you look at crime, we talked about this yesterday, you and I, crime is overall down over 30%. So that argument doesn't really stand.
And then also the governor has to call the National Guard to respond to if it's a public safety issue. But if the president is going to declare an emergency, the data that shows, and no one is saying that Chicago doesn't have a violent crime problem, but if the data shows that your murder rate is on track to be the lowest it's been in 30 years or something like that, then that pours cold water on the theory that there's an emergency here that needs to be taken into effect. Well, then why wasn't there an emergency 5 years ago when we were up near 900 homicides during COVID, or in the 90s, where consistently the city was up around 900 homicides. It's hovered around between 400 and 500, 600 over the last several years. But that's, again, another theoretical argument. The other thing is the National Guard, military, they're not law enforcement troops. That's not what they do. So you can't make the argument that they're here to bring down the crime rate or to stop crime, because they're not public safety enforcers. They're here for backup. They're here for help.
And crime is not And the judge is asking about specifically crime, and they're talking through this right now inside the courtroom. The judge saying President states they're coming to solve Chicago's crime, stop rapes and thefts. That's not a federal crime, right? So why would you, essentially she's asking, why would you then want to put the National Guard here? We are looking at the Broadview ICE facility. At one point when we were looking at this, we saw just a handful of protesters, but we are seeing those protesters start to gather in numbers, a few numbers.
Friday's been typically the day where protesters really gathered, although you've got the mayor of Broadview, Katrina Thompson, who issued the hours that they can protest, the curfew. At 6 p.m. they have to be out of there, for the protection of the town. And I know a lot of protesters were upset about that, but Mayor Thompson bringing up the point that we've got neighbors here that need to live their lives, need to go to work, need to take their kids to school, pick them up from school, and cook dinner, and not have the threat of tear gas coming into their windows, which has happened. So so that's another kind of layer here that has protected some of the operations out there in Broadview, allowed them to be more orderly. So the judge, more statements were coming in from from Anita Blanton, who's in the courtroom, and basically the judge is saying there's a large discrepancy in what you sent me and what the president has stated elsewhere. So saying that the president is making these public claims, but then when it comes to things being sent into the legal record, there's a vast discrepancy here. And we've seen this pattern with the president. He'll make claims on social media and in the media, but then when they have to go to court and the rubber meets the road and they have to satisfy legal statutes, things are very different. It doesn't hold up. It's a whole different. Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
I want to go back to something that you said, and we'll go back because we're still getting, text messages coming in from Anita Blanton inside the courtroom. But I want to go back to something that you said about the layout of Broadview, because I do think it's relevant. And for those who are watching who have never been out there, this is right in the middle of a neighborhood. Right? There are homes. There are people that, can sit on their porches and watch all of this. We are getting some new information coming in here. Yeah, no, this is in the middle, 25th. There's a big, busy thoroughfare that was closed off for a little while, right off the Eisenhower. There's the border of Maywood right there, a couple blocks of Maywood, and then Broadview. All residential, largely African-American community, largely middle class. If you go down Roosevelt Road there's lots of small businesses. And lots of neighborhoods and folks that just want to their chance to live with all this madness. When you get further away from the ICE facility, you see you're not really caught up in that, but then the issue is the helicopters that are constantly overhead. So it's all those considerations that Mayor Thompson has brought into play in terms of deciding on a curfew. Yeah, I'm looking at, we just got some more text messages from inside the courtroom. The judge is saying this, so I should only look at one set of the president's statements and not others. Troubled by, at the moment, this is the judge, that when I try to nail down with you what's on the table, you have very few answers. So the defense, having all of these arguments, at least we've heard from, the Trump administration of why the National Guard should come, but inside the courtroom, no full-scale plan or details of why they should. Yeah, it doesn't look like the Trump administration has a very detailed or strong defense right now. They're talking in vagaries, and then the judge is drilling down and basically saying, I'm troubled here, that when I try to nail down what the specifics are, you don't have any answers, like in terms of where are they going to go? Are they going to go into the neighborhoods? Are they going to arrest people? Are they going to do public safety? You're not answering the question. They're not prepared here for those specific answers. And also asking the question of why are they here? Like, what are you really bringing them here for? And so far, just looking at what has transpired in court, no real answers on that. All right, so now we have the defendant saying, well, we hope this is the beginning of turning the corner, but we can't make representations about what the future holds and what may be needed. So again, not telling you what they're going to do is a pretty it's pretty tough to be successful to win a legal argument if you're going to not even tell the judge what you plan to do with the troops here, and they're saying, well, we don't know what the future holds. So the judge is responding, your picture of what may be needed does not reflect that of Broadview Police and the Illinois State Police. Very vague statements from the defense. No concrete numbers, no concrete evidence to really prove their point of why the National Guard should be here.
It underscores that maybe the Trump administration has not issued a specific plan to National Guard officials saying, this is your plan, this is what you're going to do. And it underscores the PR component to a lot of what the president does. The National Guard, I'm sending in the troops, that sends a strong PR message. It rallies the base. People get excited. They retweet stuff.
Right.
But then you've got the operational part of it. Well, what are they going to do? What's the plan? What's the operational plan? From the defense arguments here, they don't have that. They don't have a specific plan. It's almost like ready, fire, aim. Let's get them in position, and then we'll determine what the plan is.
And I know, we have gone out into the communities. We've gone in the city of Chicago specifically. I, in fact, did a report on the west side and also the south side of the city, just asking residents, what do you feel about, the National Guard possibly coming here? A very small part of our population here, so it wasn't a complete sample. But I know you were talking about data, and when I went out there on the ground, boots on the ground, I heard from a lot of people that said they did not want the National Guard here, but there are some people that do, and perhaps they don't understand the legalities of behind when the National Guard is deployed and why, and really what they would be doing. They cannot be law enforcement in your neighborhood. There are still shootings in Chicago. You and I understand that. We get it. We're born and raised right here in Chicagoland, but that is not enough for the National Guard to be deployed in your neighborhood. And in fact, they wouldn't be able to stop anything.
Yeah, and there is data. There were polls that sampled a cross-section of Chicago, and about 70% saying no to the National Guard, although the number was a little higher in some of the Black and Latino communities, because those are the communities that face some of the problems, but still not even reaching 50%. And what those communities did vote in favor of, or the data showed that they are in favor of more police.
Right.
And police know the communities. Police are trained in policing, obviously, but also familiarity with those communities. And that's one thing National Guard is not. If you're bringing them from Texas, they're not familiar with Englewood or South Shore or Austin or the West Loop or Lincoln Park, wherever they're going to go. And that could be dangerous to the troops. That could be putting National Guard in harm's way here without any familiarity. But what the residents will say is it reflects the understanding that it is police that is here to police and solve crime and to, help enforce public safety regulations. It's not federal troops.
And we have heard from residents that have said, some of them understand, okay? They're not ignorant to the fact that the National Guard can't police and really do police work on the ground. But some people in the neighborhoods that I've talked to, I am born and raised right here in Chicago, grew up in some of these really tough neighborhoods, still have roots in those neighborhoods. People feel like the National Guard potentially standing in their community may be enough to stop criminals from acting. But in fact, what we have heard, at least today, from what we have heard from the Trump administration's plan, they're not in the neighborhoods. They're at Broadview. Tomorrow they were slated to go possibly to the courthouse, if that's even going to happen. That's not in the neighborhoods where, in fact, you would want crime to go down for those that are saying, come here. So, even though it would be, not the action of the governor anyway.
And that is the one case that folks have made. We talked to Gary McCarthy, the former superintendent. The one case you could make for National Guard in terms of impacting public safety is if their presence, their mere presence on Michigan Avenue or whatever, it deters smash and grab or burglaries or things like that, and then it helps police officers redeploy to other areas. But then the question is that what you want your city to look like? Do you want federal troops in camouflage standing in these, tourist areas and these nice areas? Mostly Americans don't want that. That's why we have a very strict federal laws on what military officials can do. So the trade-off is maybe it does deter some of these crimes downtown, but at what cost? At what cost? We're looking like we're in a military zone or in a war zone.
And very true, because I know we're talking about the smash and grabs, which, I'm not here to say they aren't a problem. They are definitely a problem in the city of Chicago, but also, is this live right now? Are we seeing a live?
I
Okay,
think
so
this
that
is
was video.
yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're looking at some file video here of things that have unfolded over the last few days. But going back to the point of smash and grabs, they are definitely a problem here in the city of Chicago. But people that live in the neighborhoods feel like their crime, crimes that are happening in their neighborhood is a problem too. So if the National Guard isn't there, does it change anything?
No, but the thing is, like, you think that they can't really be armed, they can't really police, and so if they're going to a neighborhood like that, and they're just going to stand there, they're going to be in danger.
Right.
They don't know this neighborhood. B, there's a lot to say that it can provoke more unrest. It can provoke more anger. Let's say, what's to stop? Let's say purported gang members from looking at them and then, saying, you know what, we're not going to just sit here and allow that to happen. You just don't know.
And
it's provocative. And that's why Mayor Johnson and the current thinking is that community trust is an essential part of policing. So you have to have folks in the community know the police officers, trust the police officers, or else it creates a more tense situation, and it's not safe for anybody.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about community policing. That is what the mayor and also the Chicago police superintendent has pointed to for this reduction in crime. That's what they point to right away to say, a lot of these nonprofit groups that we see working in the communities have brought down crime. So,
and they say, if the president wants to help, there's that tweet or the truth that we saw, saying that the mayor and the governor should be in jail from the president. But the local officials keep saying there are ways you can help. You have frozen federal funding for some of these programs that help public safety, or you could send us more funding for more police officers, or you could send more federal ATF or FBI, which it does seem like the FBI director was talking about doing. But when you talk about the National Guard, what the governor has said, what local officials said is that is a provocation. That is a show of force. That is an attack on the community. That is not a public safety measure, because these kinds of things just provoke more unrest, more lawlessness, more, anger in communities. And